And then, like I stated earlier, when deciding on which one of these certifications or which one is better than the other, like I said, all of them is good, but it's going to depend on your end goal. So, like I stated, at A plus, usually I would say if you're going for a IT journalist help desk, that A plus is usually a good starting point. So, for me, like I said, I was already pretty familiar with PCs a little bit, from having my own PC when I was coming up. And basically, you coming up with your PC and basically something break on your PC and you ain't got the money to fix it, then you learn to go fix it your own way. You learn to take it apart, put it back together. A lot of times you learn from those experiences. So I was in that type of situation where I had a PC, and like I said, at the time, I was trying to load up music software on my PC. I ain't know nothing about RAM and none of that stuff. I just knew that, okay, this computer won't load up my software. And then I started researching, troubleshooting. That's when I said, okay, I may need some more RAM. I go out, buy some more RAM and open up the PC. And when I'm looking at it, to me, it always looked almost like a car mechanic that work on cars. Or if you see someone work on cars, if you take a piece out, there's only one way to put that piece back in. So it is, it's either going to go in there or it ain't going to go in there. So I quickly caught on to that. So when I was looking at upgrading my RAM and things like that, you already see where one stick of RAM is at. So basically just putting the other stick in there. So like I said, with the A plus, it never was really on my radar because even though I love desktop, it wasn't really anything that I wanted to get the A plus to try to get. And maybe if I had learned about the A plus early on in my career, it might have been something that I would have went towards. But the way that it ended up for me, I was real heavy within networking. But like I said, if your end goal is just getting in the door, maybe help desk, desktop support, a lot of times that A plus is a good one to start with. And then too, it's not like you're going real deep into something to where, like the CCNA or something like that. So it's something that's going to give you a little bit of exposure. You learn your way around a PC. And like I said, this could end up getting you that desktop role. And then from there, let's say you want some exposure to networking without diving too deep. So this is where I think that Network Plus comes into play because it's a solid certification. A lot of times you see it listed for some security jobs because some security jobs, they might not need you to know networking as deep as going out and get a CCNA, but they may want you to have that understanding of networking, and that's why they may require that Network Plus. So this Network Plus, like I said, it's a real versatile certification because, like I said, it's not going too deep into networking, but like I said, a lot of other positions that may not be networking positions often ask for this certification. So then if your target is a networking career, then this is where the CCNA is going to stand out. So the CCNA is definitely a networking certification. Like I said, this is one of the certifications you start out with. Hopefully that certification helps you to get into the door and move up to a networking role. And then as you start to get experience, that's when I would say start working towards that CCNP certification. For most folks, usually the CCNP comes at the point where you may be in a position, and in order to move up to that next level, they may want you to have that CCNP certification. So, but definitely if your end goal is networking, the CCNA would be the best option when it comes to this question. And then moving on to an employer standpoint. So usually, like I said, with most job roles, you see both of these certifications listed all the time. So usually a lot of times most employers, they do list a lot of certifications on their job roles and job descriptions. I always like to put in the perspective of a lot of times they're looking for Superman, but you know what I'm saying, they'll be happy with Clark Kent. And I always mispronounce his name. But they're looking for Superman, but they'll be happy with someone a little bit under Superman. So I'm just saying that to say a lot of times you'll see numerous certifications on the job description. Does that mean that you need to have each one of these certifications in order to apply? No, it doesn't. At least from my perspective, it doesn't. So a lot of times, if I got one of those certifications, usually I'm applying. If I got anything if I look at the job description and there's a couple items on that bullet list I can do or I'm pretty familiar with, I'm applying. Because sometimes what ends up happening is, from an HR standpoint, they may have a role for like let's say a senior engineer or something. So the role is for a senior engineer. We got all these lists on the description, all these checkpoints we're looking for. But let's say no one at that senior engineer level applies. So if no one at that senior engineer level applies, but then someone who would be a great network engineer, a regular engineer, not a senior engineer applies, then a lot of times, from a HR standpoint, they may look at that as they save some money because we had $100,000 for the senior engineer. We found a good regular engineer that has the potential to become senior, but except for instead of spending this $100,000, we're now spending 70, 80 grand. So we saved 20,000 there. So a lot of times this is why you see a lot of these certifications listed on the job description. And at least that's from my standpoint. That's how I make it make sense. So you see both of these certifications. I would tell you from my experience, I do get a lot of hits probably off my CCNA. And now that I got 10 years of experience, roughly about 10 years before I left and went to my current position, I would say some of that goes into play too, because I do have, like I said, a couple years of experience in an enterprise environment. But definitely I do get hit up, I would say at least once or twice a month from a recruiter that's inboxing me either on LinkedIn or either on Indeed, letting me know they got this role available and they like that I had a CCNA. So I do think you get more hits from this. And then what's weird is, I'm not sure if you listened to any of my first episodes I ever made, but at one time when I was looking for a job, when I first got out of college and I had my CCNA, I remember getting a call or calling up a recruiter because he had this job listed and the job was requiring a Network Plus. And I remember the recruiter, apparently he didn't understand the difference between a Network Plus and a CCNA. So he was like, well, man, I can't send you on the job because this position is requiring a Network Plus and you got a CCNA, which anybody knows that if you got that CCNA, it pretty much proves that you got well over that Network Plus knowledge of networking. So, but he didn't understand that. So he never sent me on the job. So needless to say, like I said, you'll see a lot of these certifications listed on the job description. Doesn't mean that you need all of them. But like I said, if you got a couple of them or if you got one of them, I would still apply.